The wind howled through the dense forest, a mournful cry that rattled the loose shutters of the old inn on the hill. It had stood there for over a century, its walls steeped in secrets no one dared to uncover. The air was thick with the earthy scent of moss and damp wood, and the faint glow of the moon barely penetrated the heavy fog that blanketed the valley below. Inside the inn, a single candle flickered on a wooden table, casting long shadows across the room. In the dim light, Clara adjusted her scarf, her fingers trembling slightly. She had come to the inn seeking solace, but instead she found herself gripped by an inexplicable unease. Her past was a closed book to most, but the weight of the unopened pages pressed heavily on her. She ran her hand over the smooth surface of an old letter she had received weeks ago, its cryptic message still haunting her. Patience will reveal the truth. Clara didn't know who had sent it or what it meant, but something about the inn had drawn her here, as if answering a silent call. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with a hollow gaze, had spoken little when he handed her the key to her room. His warning, however, echoed in her mind. Don't go wandering after midnight. Now, as the ancient grandfather clock in the corner struck 12, Clara felt a chill crawl up her spine. The walls seemed to whisper, and the air felt heavy with anticipation. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Clara's unease deepened as she noticed peculiarities around the inn. The guests, though polite, avoided her gaze, their smiles too strained to be genuine. A woman in a faded green dress lingered in the hallway, her vacant stare fixed on a portrait of a stern-looking man. Clara's curiosity compelled her to approach, but the woman vanished into the shadows before she could say a word. Her thoughts returned to the letter. She unfolded it again, scrutinizing every stroke of the ink. The handwriting was elegant but erratic, as if written in haste. Beneath the cryptic message, she noticed a faint watermark she hadn't seen before. It bore the emblem of the inn. Odd, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. A sudden creak from the floorboards made her freeze. She turned to see the innkeeper standing in the doorway, his gaunt frame illuminated by the flickering candlelight. "Is something troubling you, miss?" he asked, his voice low and measured. Clara hesitated. "This letter, it's connected to this place, isn't it?" His expression darkened, and for a moment she thought he might deny it. But then he sighed. "You do well to leave it be. Some truths are better left buried." With that, he retreated into the shadows, leaving Clara with more questions than answers. Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to investigate. Her first stop was the parlor, where the old portraits seemed to watch her every move. One in particular caught her attention, a painting of a young woman with piercing eyes holding a key. As Clara examined the painting, she noticed something unusual. The key in the woman's hand appeared to be painted over. She ran her fingers along the frame and discovered a tiny latch. With a click, a hidden compartment opened, revealing a small, ornate key. Her heart raced as she pocketed it, feeling both exhilaration and dread. The key seemed to hum with an energy of its own, and Clara knew it was meant for something important. She remembered the innkeeper's warning, but couldn't shake the feeling that the answers she sought lay behind a locked door. Her search led her to the basement, a place the other guests seemed to avoid. The air grew colder as she descended, and the faint smell of mildew filled her nostrils. The shadows seemed to dance in the dim light of her candle, playing tricks on her mind. In the corner of the basement, she found an old chest bound with iron. The key fit perfectly. As she turned it, the lock clicked open and the lid creaked, revealing its contents: a journal, a locket, and a bundle of letters tied with a black ribbon. Clara's hands shook as she opened the journal, its pages yellowed with age. The entries detailed a tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and revenge, all centered around the inn. The letters, addressed to someone named Margaret, painted a picture of forbidden love and a promise broken. The final entry in the journal sent chills down her spine. If you found this, then the cycle begins anew. Patience will reveal the truth, but only if you're willing to pay the price. Suddenly, the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut, plunging the basement into darkness. Clara's breath quickened as footsteps echoed above. Someone, or something, was coming. Clara's candle flickered and went out as the footsteps grew louder. She fumbled for the matches in her pocket, but her trembling hands made it difficult to strike one. The darkness felt alive, pressing in around her, suffocating her with its weight. A voice, low and chilling, broke the silence. "You've come too far, Clara." She spun around, her back pressed against the cold stone wall. The figure that emerged from the shadows was the woman from the portrait, her piercing eyes glinting in the faint light seeping through the cracks in the floorboards above. "Margaret?" Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. The woman smiled, but it was devoid of warmth. "I've waited a long time for someone like you," she said, stepping closer. "You've unlocked the past, but the gift of patience is not without its cost." Clara felt a surge of panic. "What do you want from me?" "To finish what was started," Margaret replied. She held out her hand, and the journal flew from Clara's grasp into hers. "The truth you sought has consequences. You've inherited my burden, and now you must make the choice." The room began to spin, and Clara's vision blurred. She heard Margaret's voice one last time before everything went black. "Patience is a gift, but also a curse." When Clara awoke, she was back in her room at the inn, the bar, journal resting on the bedside table. The locket and letters were gone, and the ornate key lay broken in her palm. Morning light streamed through the window, but it did little to dispel the lingering shadows in her mind. As she prepared to leave, the innkeeper stopped her at the door. "You've seen more than most," he said, his tone solemn. "But remember this, the truth is not always kind." Clara nodded, unable to find the words to respond. As she walked away from the inn, she felt the weight of the past pressing on her shoulders. The answers she had found were far from comforting, and the price of her patience was a burden she would carry forever. In the distance, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a single word, "Wait."